Ladies and gentlemen, would you consider a fund administrator to be a very serious person? Do you? Don't you? Well, I may tell you that I've been a fund administrator for a short period of time, and thereby you should know they are very serious people, very straightforward, and they don't like to laugh or make any jokes. So this video is about being serious. No, this video is about you. In case you want to do an internship as a fund admin, or if you actually want to be a fund admin. Actually, I've never heard anyone say my dream is being a fund admin. I just feel it in my bones. That's who I am. I need to express that. I need to go to be a fund admin. No, actually, I've never heard that, but could be that actually you are one of these people, and I just did not get to know you yet. So then in that case, the video is also for you, and the video is generally for you because, it's not that I'm watching it then day in and day out once it is produced. After all that nonsense I'm talking, let me tell you that I consider the fund administrator the all-rounder, as it is stated here on the slide. And why, I will tell you in the presentation, so stay tuned. It's really annoying to make this marketing stuff. I wondered if I do it like other YouTubers saying stuff like that. It just doesn't feel right to me. Okay, so I won't do it anymore. And, you may assume that it looks like this here. Like fancy graphs and infographics and business and stuff and so on. Yeah, so expect that. That is a way more accurate background picture for the fund admin. So if you do like tables and macros and Excel generally, then you are just right here. And if that is not the case, then just run away and do something else. Become a teacher or one of the other beautiful jobs that are not in the finance industry, based within the finance industry. But if you are a freak and you do know Excel and you even like Excel and you like to play around with that stuff, then you're really welcome. Then that's good for you, because here you will get to know how to use, in which circumstances to use that, and that will be 95%. No, for the rest, of course, there's then the 5%, which is not up to Excel, and that is the important part for you, and that therefore I will put it somewhere within the video so you won't know where to find it. Okay, so now after this more of nonsense, we can maybe go to the overview. Please excuse me, it's again like in the middle of the night that I'm producing these videos, because that's just how I do things. Yeah, so let's have a look at the overview finally. Ladies and gentlemen, here we arrived at the overview, and as we can see, the main question, of course, is what is a fund administrator? That's the question that should be resolved after this, or should be cleared, or should be whatever. You should know what is a fund administrator after this presentation, and I just keep it quiet. I can't talk. I keep it quite simple. So first of all, we will have a look at the key responsibilities of a fund admin. I found 6. We will have a look at them, or I defined 6. Other people may find way more. Then we will have a look at also, not from a job perspective, but from an investor perspective, because I consider my viewers being super wealthy individuals which are looking for investment advice. No, of course not. But anyways, I mention it because it defines the role of the fund admin. And in the end, since I do have some personal experience in this branch, not only in this branch, but in this specific position, I may present you. No, I actually am presenting you then a case study. I don't like this word, but I will just tell you stuff that happens and typical situations that may appear, typical problems that occur, and these kind of things. All right, so now you should be aware what is in front of you within the next minutes, and so nothing can surprise you now anymore. Well, let's see, and let's begin with the first topic, which is key responsibilities of the fund admin. We can start. So, what are actually the key responsibilities of a fund admin? Well, since the name includes the word administrator in it, it is, of course, related to administration. And what actually is administration? Do you know? Well, administration is the management of a company or of issues which are concerning a company. I think something like this. It should stand like that in the dictionary. If not, then, well, then it's fake news. But I think that is the sense of the meaning of administration. So the fund admins are the ones which actually do manage the fund. Well, not in the sense that they decide where to invest and which legal structure to choose and so on. Well, actually, that can be also sometimes the case. Well, no, but more on an operational basis, of course. So, investor services, that's the word here. And what are investor services in these terms? I mean, in these situations? Well, a lot, because as an admin, you do offer everything that the investor or your client, better to say, it's not always the investor, your client wants or needs during the lifetime of the fund, if it has a lifetime, if it's not a completely open-ended fund. And well, that includes, of course, where do we start with the onboarding, of course, and the fund admins, they are always part of the onboarding, since, I mean, they will then manage the fund, they have to see it, and they consult the fund. Better to speak, the clients, not the fund. The fund is not created yet, but they do know, they do have the expertise, which processes are taking long, what is complicated, what would be a good idea for that strategy, and so on and so forth. They are always inbound in the onboarding process, as many others are as well. You can check that out in the other videos about other positions. Actually, onboarding is always mentioned. So in the onboarding process, a lot of people are involved. Well, then, of course, also the investor records. So they need to be kept in place. And, well, that is, I always coined it like, it's a very complicated form of being a secretary, so to say, mixed with a how they call librarian. Sorry, I was in German in my mind. Well, it's something like that. So a mix of that. So it's keeping track of the investor records. Another thing that is belonging to the investor services. Then they do also engage in the subscription redemptions of a fund. And if all that says nothing to you right now, then that's no problem. There are enough videos on my channel where you can find out everything into the smallest detail about these kind of things. Just check it out. Then investor inquiries or queries. That is a thing that may happen frequently on a daily basis, since always something is not working smooth, or I mean, doesn't need to be something big, but something small as always. So investors do send emails, and depending also on the investor, sometimes investors are really. Sometimes there's a difference of 2 cents, and they Yeah, well, they do make that a query. So that can be one situation. But I mean, investor queries can be many things. For example, that they tell you, oh, we don't have a passport in the country we want to operate, and that is due to you, because you did not actually conduct the payment correctly, and then you are in a bad place. Well, that could be also a query, but there are also nice queries which can happen. And then there's the reporting, of course. But of course, in this related to investor services, reporting here is of course meant to the investor. Sometimes the investor wants some reports, even though there is no board meeting or something, or they want to have a track of various transactions. They want to have the proofs of these transactions and so on. All that does the administrate, and therefore is responsible. Therefore, so that makes a huge part of daily operations. I mean, yeah, of course. And well, it is dependent on like how the company is structured. Then sometimes you do have an investor and client services teams, which is then part of the administration, but then it's specialized, so to say. Not that is due to the company, how huge the company is, how complex the funds are, and so on and so forth. So that's the first thing. Second thing would be then accounting and valuation. Yes, and here it is, of course, fund transactions, like fees, for example, they need to be paid, and taxes need to be paid. I don't know how to say it in French. It's taxe des abos or something. It's a lot of taxes that need to be paid in some funds. Some are tax. Some can be structured as a tax-free version. I wanted to say as a tax-free entity. And well, now we come to the most important part, depending on the fund, on the regularity of the NAV. But it's NAV, so the net asset value, and that's the price on which the shares. I mean, that's the price of the shares. The net asset values. I mean, that's the worth of all the assets, net assets in net. Yeah, well, of the fund, and this is the basis to sell or buy shares, and thereby this is quite important. And this can be very complicated depending on which kind of fund one is dealing with. In case it is open funds, not closed-ended funds, this is more complicated depending on if you have like 20 share classes within a fund. Yeah, then it's fun to do that. But the calculation of the NAV, for the complexity, and because also it takes just a lot of time to do that for so many funds, can be also outsourced, or there can be even an own, then it's the back office, for example, but there can be also a whole team only existing to calculate NAVs. That can actually be the case. Yeah, then you are calculating a lot of stuff together, and well, generally, yeah, well, it's actually it's completely depending. Sometimes the NAVs are created in the accounting compartment, but from my experience, I do know both. So I know when it's separated. I know when also the administrator is doing the calculations in the back office, and then the front office then is only involved in, well, the NAV, the end level overview, the end level checks of the NAV. So it's actually only giving a signature, like, yeah, it's fine. So while people on the other side of the world are calculating NAVs, and that's actually a sad truth, doing all the math and doing all these, how is it called, nitty-gritty stuff, well, then in the Western European world, people are actually just saying, yeah, that's fine, or it's not fine. But that's how the world is structured. I cannot change it right now. I just can make you aware of it. And, well, so this is yellow, actually. because this is a really super important part of the administration. It's a very, very important part, as I mentioned, because they are dealt on that basis in the funds. Important, keep it in mind. And then preparation of financial statements, of course, as well. Yeah, that's also done by the fund admin, the financial statements. That's it about the, well, accounting part and valuation part. As I mentioned, can be also within the accounting part, or I mean, there are companies, they can call it whatever they want. I mean, like they can call it the NAV compartment, and nobody will say anything because they are free to call it whatever. Yeah, just and also they can put it in the way they want it. But yeah, that's typically how it is, how I got to know it. All right, so then the third from 6, is the fund operations. And while one may think all that are already fund, or were already fund operations, yeah. But hereby is meant the core day-to-day stuff, and that is settlements, cash management. So FX operations are conducted by the fund administrator. As I said, yeah, settlements. What else is standing there? Cannot read it. And for example, also disbursements. So these kind of transactions are done. Cash management, yeah, currency exchange. Also, if there, for example, that belongs also there too. Is like if there's if the fund is operating on like 5 currencies, and there's a disbursement to be done in 2 or 5 days or whatever time, and in this share class of, I don't know, SEK, which is the Swedish currency, there has never been any SEK actually in it, then the fund admin will give the investor a notice, and this kind of stuff is meant thereby. So it's a lot about communication. Of course it is. Well, that was not intelligent to say, but well, of course that always belongs there too. Therefore, the first point was called investor services. All right. So now I need to go a little bit to the side, I think. I hope that's still everything working here. Now it is about the regulatory compliance. Regulatory compliance means AML, KYC, KFC. I wanted to say, well, no, but it's KYC, and this is the anti-money laundering stuff. Can be also an own compartment, these two things, but the administrator is definitely can be involved in that as well. Then also, yes, they are involved in reporting. So in Luxembourg especially, it is reporting to the CSSF and the BCL, so the Bank of Luxembourg, and CSSF is actually the like financial advisory supervision, and they do of course bring their own reports and their own forms and so on and so forth, and depending on the quantity of the NAVs and the kind of fund, these these reports need to be done every month, which is sometimes quite easy because you can automate that, but depending on the company structure, this must not, I mean, this is not necessarily the case. And then it is again accounting, and then you have huge balance sheets and so on, and you need to fill out the wanted or needed fields in the reports. I mean, how's it called? Boxes, whatever. All right, that is it about the regulatory compliance. And well, then of course the fund government, so to say, is also included. Is also touched by the administrator, and the oversight thereby is meant that, of course, I mean, there are board meetings, and the fund administrator. There we go again a little bit into the secretary role. And that is, they assist, of course, with these meetings. They do draw the minutes. Well, of course, also they it can be that they do the KPIs and TERs. I mean, there are various forms of indices. Sorry, don't know, of calculations which express something about the performance of the fund and costs and so on. And that's also quite an important thing. They also do coordinate the audits. So of course, funds need to be audited. Not all. Yes, I mean, if you don't know, just again check out my channel, and then you will know more, and you will know which funds need to be audited and which not, and when and how and everything. So they do also coordinate that. So they actually do make it. They schedule the time frame. They are responsible, therefore, that everything is within the limits. I wanted to say within the deadlines that are given, and that the whole process is working smoothly, that the auditor has all the required information that they do need, and so on. And documentation. Documentation about all these things, of course, as well. Fund administrators do get a lot of papers sent, which they then keep and document. And also, I mean, making the board, the minutes, is a documentation form. And now we come to the last point, which I did not know how to summarize, but I was calling it technological solutions, and thereby is meant Excel. But of course, this is not the only thing, but thereby is meant that, of course, the administrator has to have an interest to make processes smoothly for the fund, for the investor, for the client, and yes, thereby do establish efficient admin processes and also always work on them. And depending on the company, again, the processes can be very complicated and useless at times, and then it is up to the administrator to take care to provide there some technical solutions. But generally, I mean, they do use a lot of different programs, a lot of different systems to generate NAVs, to like databases, to fit stuff together. I mean, invoices, for example, that they are stored at the right place, and all these kind of things. So I could count and then find more things until tomorrow, so I better stop, because tomorrow is quite far from now. Like 21 hours to go. Well, so that now you should have an idea about the key responsibilities of the administrator. Well, and now that you do know about the key responsibilities, if you didn't understand them, I see if I link a video that explains it better, but I do have them all on my channel, so you can just watch like 100 hours and get to know everything. That's what I would recommend you, of course. And well, so now that you know the key responsibilities, let's just have a look on the whole thing from an investor side. That's quite fast to be explained. And then Wake up, ladies and gentlemen. No, I've actually told that to myself because I think I got a little bit sleepy in the last few minutes. And actually, as you can see, the lights are off now, so I'm running out of energy here, and soon I will record from a dark space. Actually, since I realize right now that it is early morning already, and I'm still sitting here providing for you the information about what a fund admin is and what everything about the fund admin. Just subscribe to this channel if you want to support my dysfunctional and unhealthy lifestyle of producing videos in the night. Well, I would like you to do so, that I can continue with that, since I'm quite content with this situation. All right. Shit. That's the thing. Like, I think if I would do the videos a day over, you would have less noise in between, but I don't do that. So you do have a lot of noise. Okay. Investor advantages. What are the advantages for an investor to actually go for a fund admin? And, well, in most cases, that is not even questionable, because this is just not a thing the investor can decide out of a mood swing, decides to go for an admin. No, it can't, because that is applicable due to some laws. And also these laws are described on my channel. Just check out my channel. And maybe I should just tell you which are excluded. I mean, so which are able to not appoint a fund administrator. Sometimes it's difficult to just formulate a simple sentence. Well, excluded are self-managed funds. You know, what self-managed funds are? Well, it should be self-explaining, but actually it isn't. So again, check out my channel, because there it is explained. I think in the first EY presentation or in the second. Just watch all of them. And then in-house admins. I mean, if of course someone has an in-house admin, like large corporations, they do not need to appoint a third party, which is common sense, I would say, if that's the case. But I mean, if you are, for example, my viewers, of course, if one of my viewers is a super rich individual which wants to open a fund to gain some more money, to make some profits, then you are probably not owning simultaneously like a super large corporation. And if so, just contact me, because I would like to get to know you and invite you for a coffee. So yeah, it's rare that that's the case. But of course, they're existing. For example, take BlackRock has usually fund admins. I don't know. Think of something like, maybe there are funds from KPMG or EY or some consulting stuff like that, which due to they have administrator, or if State Street, for example, may be the beneficial of this situation. Okay, so then limited partnerships. So then in that case, it can be the case, then the GP can act as an administrator. All right, and then single investor funds, they are also able to do so, since they only do have one single investor. Yeah. Is it self-explaining? Yes, it is, because I don't want to explain right now these simple things. I mean, I won't do it. I wanted to do it now, I won't do it. You have to, you have to just find it out on your own, if you want to know. Okay, so these are kind of structures are excluded, right? So what are then the advantages for all the other ones? And basically, basically the same that I've mentioned prior to that. But now we will look at it from the other side. So expertise and efficiency is the first thing that the investor, of course, profits from, because fund administrators are, as one may think, specialized in fund administration, and therefore they possess the necessary expertise and the necessary knowledge in all these things. I mean, in regulatory compliance, accounting, valuation, and reporting. They established already processes. I mean, they do have a whole infrastructure that is only built for that. So if you are not like a extreme genius that is like 5 times Albert Einstein, then you may profit from this expertise and efficiency that they do bring with them. So then, of course, also the regulatory compliance they do have already in place. So investment funds are operating on a heavily regulated environment, depending on also which kind of fund it is, if it is an alternative investment, if it UCITS or just a mutual fund, better to speak. And well, as the fund administrators are experts in their area, of course, they do have also the knowledge about the regulatory compliance, and they do have the processes in place and all that stuff, and they should have in-depth knowledge, but it's not always the case, depending on the employee. There are different employees, as they are different people, and they differ in their work in everything. So yeah, I think you know that. If you're not a newborn baby, you should be aware of that situation. And well, they of course can then help to comply with the laws, comply with regulatory stuff, like, as I mentioned, BCL, CSF, and these obligations. All right, then independence and transparency. Fund administrators act as, they are third parties. They are not belonging to anyone. They're just swimming in the sea and, are lonely. And no, they are third parties. So they provide thereby an additional layer of oversight and transparency for the fund operations. Yeah, of course, because it's a third party. Thereby, it is, of course, another eye, so to say, that is looking on it. Okay, yeah, and that independence is particularly useful for institutional investors, or actually institutional investors, that are the only ones who actually may require, due to the law, an independent third-party administrator, exactly for that reason. All right, then investor services, not investment services, investor services. I've mentioned it already prior to that. So, of course, you can imagine that they profit from that. Yeah, if there's someone doing the secretary, it's not actually secretary work, but sometimes it may remember one on very complicated secretary issues. And that is, of course, useful for an investor. You should know, because, as I mentioned, I have the wealthiest individuals, as I know them as my viewers. Thank you. It's only 45 until now, or I don't know what it is, 45, 44, 43. But that's enough, because as we know, the control is always getting, how was the word? That was centrifugal, and the other one was centripetal. That's the development. Yeah, check out the government and liability video. All right, risk management and control. Fund administrators do assist in implementing robust control mechanisms. Why do they do that? Because that is inherent of a fund administrator. They just do that generally wherever they do go. No, but due to that, they are monitoring the investments, keeping track of the books, of the records that they are documenting everything. This is, of course, and they produced enough. That should be the first thing that comes to my mind, but it didn't. So, yeah, you got me. I made a mistake. Anyways, you should continue watching because every one of us does that. And this is actually not a mistake, but it just came to my mind. And yeah, well, they do enough, and thereby, of course, they offer a devaluation of the fund assets, and thereby, of course, they do help also to mitigate risks. And they may have also some risk. I mean, they do work together with the risk compartment as well, but they may have, depending on the structure, also have an own assessment due to that. And then we do have the scalability. I mean, as a fund can grow, yes, fund can grow in size and especially complexity and the fund structure, how it is made with master feeder structures, which before the money comes in the end holding, so to say, the money moved around the world like crazy, like crazy actually. And so it can be kind of complex. And then if you need to get some cash into some of these, in one of these entities to provide cash to, well, you get the picture. Well, the administrator, because of the expertise again, they do have, as you see, as me, I was one once. I do have a lot of expertise, and yeah, well, they of course have the scalability and flexibility in managing increased demands, operational requirements, and things like that. So they do have their infrastructure again for larger volumes, depending, of course, on the administrator. I mean, there are small administrators, there are large administrators. Yeah. So that's it. That's it. You're done. Me, I'm done. I'm done with it. I'm done with it here. So now I'm done with the investor side. Yeah. Meaning, yeah, I can go to bed soon. In the morning. Yeah, it will be a nice weekend. And now we will reach the last topic, which is the case study. Oh no, the personal experience, meaning me talking. And as you see, this might not be always going straight ahead or straight forward. Or, yeah, well, I will just continue talking, but on the next slide, actually, and I will probably think about what I will say. Otherwise, at this time, not a good idea to not do so. All right, so let's continue with some case studies. I was actually taking 2 minutes to think about, and I was thinking the best personal experience I can deliver is to describe actually how classical day, if there has been any, was looking like. So yeah, basically you go to work. That's the first thing. No, I mean, like, first of all, you check the emails. You check the emails because you will get a ton of emails every day. And like 50% are useless. That's the first thing. Or 40 or 60, depending on the day, on the weather, I don't know. And yeah, well, because you are in many distributors and distribution emails, and they just reach you, and you read 2 minutes through it until you find out that is nothing of your concern, and well, these kind of things. So you first check in the emails, like, are there queries from the investors? Is there anything? Was there anything going on? Was there something special that happened overnight? Since you can have like US investors, or if you are an American, you can have global investors, global clients, and then time is not really a thing. Therefore, it can happen that in the night something is happening. All right, that's the first thing. Then you always have some ongoing processes like disbursements which need to be done. You have to get signatures from Mancos, from AIFMs, from the board members, from the investor, being able then to do the transaction, whatever the transaction actually is. Which kind of transaction? That's what I wanted to say. You do receive legal documents which need to be documented. Which actually need to be put in an organized system. There should be. You have to use various. You have to then, in case you do the transaction, then you have a cutoff time, which here in Europe is usually around midday. Then there are different cutoff times for dollar, for all the different currencies. So you have to be aware of that factor. And if there are sometimes really short-dated transactions coming in, and you have just 5 minutes or 10 minutes to the cutoff, then it's fun. Yeah, because depending on how the process is designed, you may need to contact the depositary, need to attach all the document, all the documentation of this transaction, send it to the depositary, and then when the depositary is friendly, it will do the transaction. And if you're 1 minute late, then you have to wait for the next day. You do have to be, then it can happen that there are board meetings in which you will, listen to the board meeting, or you do the minutes for the meeting, or you prepare the meeting up front, of course. But that are things which do happen occasionally. Mainly it is really the daily stuff, and depending also on the period. If it is the end of the year, you will have a lot of stuff going on for it's the closing period for the year. So a lot of transactions will happen because people want to get it in the accounting of the current year then, and not in the next year, and this kind of thing. So then can be at times a little bit stressful, depending on also how many funds you do administer. And actually, if the rest is also doing their job, which they do, of course, everyone, and no, actually, from my experience, yes. Well, that's one thing. Then there are special situations that can occur. Or sometimes you do have accounting. For example, a typical query could be the investor is saying what is that? I do see here a 7,000 euro fee, and I have no idea what that is. Tell me. And then it's about you to find out. And depending on the fund, they can have a lot of transactions and a lot of operations generally. So actually, you don't always know, especially if you are not accustomed to the fund, if you don't know the fund well. Besides, that happens then more occasionally, depending on where you are located within the structure of the administration structure of the company. You will be involved in onboarding, or, for example, sub-fund creation or liquidation also of funds, in which cases you have to deal with liquidators, with lawyers, with law firms. You will get to know all of them. And, well, depending on the specific funds, you will receive different agreements, for example, which need then to be documented as well and need to be double checked. And, for example, before disbursement is taking place, need to be double checked with the investor again, so that you are not transacting 10 million to you to your my bank account. And so the core thing, I would say, is really transactions, accounting issues. Of course, then you also prepare some reports at times for meetings, but mainly it is that, and reporting. I mean, every month, depending on the frequency of the NAV, you may have to do every month various reports. When they are not automated, then you have to do it actually manually, which is not always fun, especially when you deal with funds that they have a lot of sub funds and then different share classes within them, and all that needs to be then accounted. You have to have the NAV oversight. Of course, I forgot almost. Yeah, the NAV is also a big part that also has to be. There's also not a cut-off time most of the times, but there's a time. If the NAV is not received at typical time, the investor will say something. Usually, sometimes they also don't, because also the AIFM, for example, which is depending on receiving it, does not always need it, depending on the fund. And then you may be lucky and they don't query anything. So then, yes, and reporting has also deadlines every month. So to the 10th, or to the then the other one to the end of the month, I think. Or it was a strange time. The one was in the beginning, and the other one was in the middle or something of the month. Well, there is not really a typical day, but then you coordinate the audits in the end of the year also, meaning you have to draw some schedules for the auditors. Actually, you are talking a lot with people, because you need to call them, you need to call the CSSF, because maybe they do not have the right share classes in place, or they are their system needs to be updated because they still display share classes which are not existing. Then you deal with providers for these reportings. They can have trouble with technical issues. So you deal with them, you deal with the investor, you deal with the AIFM, you deal with the, you deal with everyone. Even with the facility management, you do deal. And that's basically it. And actually there's no typical day. So you check the emails, you do what was on your list. I mean, what is generally on your list these days, because you will have different focuses. So you have maybe one fund, and then in this fund it is about the reports. Then in the other fund it is about the liquidation that you have to take care that you will somehow handle. And then you have a call with the liquidator, or something related to that at the midday. Then afterwards you find out that transaction was not conducted correctly, and the investor is not happy, and then you cannot do anything, but you need to make sure that it will be transacted the next day. I mean, of course, that shouldn't happen. Then maybe in the afternoon, you again do phone with the CSSF to clear some things, and you have to do then maybe in the evening you do some tax related reports, declarations, and then you go home and make and create videos about exactly that. And that's what you could do. But many people go home and I don't know what they do. They watch TV, or do something similar. Yeah, maybe you can tell me. And this could be a typical day. So actually, there is no typical day, but I think I've mentioned now some things, so you should have hopefully a better idea what awaits you if you're doing an internship, or if it's your dream to become a fund administrator. Yeah, go for it. So this is it for today, and thanks for watching. It was fun, even though I'm tired, and see you next time.